questions on the board?
Last time around, last election, there was basically an anti-incumbent election.
Right.
How do you feel that's going to impact you? The superintendent now, of course, is gone. That was here at the time, and perhaps the voters were reacting to that as opposed to the board members themselves. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
So you're asking, how do I feel? Do I feel as though that will be a factor in the election this time? Well, I'm not sure. You know, we can always guess, and if it is a factor, then they should vote for Mr. Schaefer, or Mr. Daughtry's that just came in, because Mr. Tremontick and I both, he served on the board for almost 8 years. I've served on the board for 11 years and 8 months. You know, we are both incumbents, if you will. So if if the people out there are going to vote and they want change, then they need to vote on 2 of the newcomers that are coming in. Whether or not that will happen, I don't know, because I can't predict what's going to happen out there in the electorate. I know that there are a lot of people that, even though change was voted on in the last election, I know there are a lot of people that are very unhappy and they don't feel like the promises have been kept that were made. So I've just got to make sure that the change agents that are in favor of what I've done are at the polls and voting for me.
What is your wish list for the 2013 legislative session? And the context, of course, you've been a president of the Florida School Boards Association. You have that vantage point of having seen what's going on. Would you tell us, what is your assessment currently of the state's relationship with the school boards, and then what would you like? What's on that wish list for you?
As far as the relationship, it changes. In fact, this is going to be a big year of change, and I'm passing the baton, if you will, to Tom Scott. In fact, Tom has indicated that he has an interest in this. In fact, of the 11 years that I've been on the board, 8.5 of those years I have been the legislative liaison, which is, it's not a simple task to do that. It's a lot of legwork. It's also a lot of preparation. It's also a lot of educating of your legislative individuals that are serving in Tallahassee. And Tom has said that that's something that he thinks that he would like to do. So I'm going to pass that baton off to him. And I have been kind of showing him the ropes of how to do it. And, you know, our relationship, the important thing that you do is once these legislators, whoever they are, get seated, then you need to immediately start meeting with them. You need to go and you need to, you know, reach out and say, you know, if there's anything that I can do for you, you know, as far as getting you up to speed, you know, in education, I'll be glad to do that. If there's anything that you need, call me. I'll get, you know, a 24-hour turnaround for the materials that you need to help you do your job. And as far as the platform, you know, this year we just said, you know, hold us harmless. In other words, don't give us any more unfunded mandates, which that's something that comes down the pike all the time. And sometimes, you know, it's do they really understand that even though you don't think that there's any money tied to this mandate that you're putting forth, then it might actually have some financial implications once it gets down to enforcing it. And that's what we've got to do, is make sure that we let them know that, you know, if you're going to mandate something, we need to have funding that goes along with it. In fact, we're right now reducing our budget by $15 million. Over the last 6 years, we've probably reduced, you know, 4 or 5 times that much in the budget. Last year, we had to reduce by $30 million. So, you know, we are looking at continual reductions. I don't see any increases in education, even though Governor Scott said that he has put $1 billion back in the budget. That still doesn't make up for all the reductions that have been taken out of the education budget through the last since 2006.
So keeping with your point about Governor Scott, I mean, they took 1.4, 1.5 out, and they put $1 billion in, so there's an instant shortfall there of large magnitudes. But the local delegation is going to have the biggest turnover it's seen ever. I mean, your 2 senior elected officials have got 1 term underneath them. The rest of the elected body is going to be new. Now you're passing the baton to a new board member who hasn't gone through the process. So, you know, where does that leave us fighting for dollars and having a voice in Tallahassee knowing where the bathroom is and what it means when a bill's in the hopper and those kind of things that are integral to finding dollars for the.
And that's one of the things that I'm working with Mr. Scott right now on. While I'm passing the baton, I'm not going to let it go.
Good.
I mean, the fact that I'm going to be on the board, I will still be up in Tallahassee when it's days in the legislature. I will still be going around. I will still be making or having relationships with all of those individuals, because obviously I'm going to have a better relationship from the get-go because I'm out there campaigning with them every day, and he's back in his office and he's not up for re-election this year. He's not campaigning, and as a result of not being campaigning, he's not going to have that one-up or that friendship development that I'm going to have because I've done it out on the campaign trail. And I'm going to make sure that he's up to speed with his relationships with these individuals, and we have to be very careful about what I can give him what ifs, I can give him hypotheticals, but like when we start developing the platform, I've been working with Bob Serra so that Bob Serra knows exactly what to work with him on. We're having a meeting again this week in Tampa so that Bob and I can kind of go over what the platform will look like, how he's going to help Tom, because Tom hasn't done it in the past, and then we'll have to do all of our talking at the table. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have about 5 minutes left of the interview. Any other questions?
From a financial standpoint, I know you talked about reductions, and this year I assume will be flat. What we're hearing from the county appraiser is that property taxes will be flat. How do you find dollars to work through these budget changes without harming education? And number two, I know the county has a lot of land that they bought anticipating growth in 2003 through 2007. Do you see any way to extricate themselves, the district board, from those assets?
Well, first of all, we grew by 2,000 students last year, and usually when Tallahassee makes a recommendation, not a recommendation, but they throw something out there and say you'll have this many students this year, and they are saying that we are actually going to be a growing county again next year. They anticipate that we are looking at another 2,000 students in growth this year. As far as looking at the budget and looking for things, I first like to look at things that do not affect the classroom. That is the last place that I want to reduce. We can look at services, we can look at things that we do, such as, let me give you a real good example that I championed this during the last term, and I'm very proud of it. There was a little resistance at first, but we used to have like 2 or 3 weeks of graduations. We now have graduations over a period of 1 weekend. And we do that because instead of renting a venue, think about it, if you rent Harborside 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times, and you only use it one time each time, you're paying the full price for each time. One of the things that we changed, and I made the recommendation, I said, a lot of other districts that are large that only have a few venues, they rent the place and they have multiple graduations on a given day. We started doing that. The first year that we did it, we had a little pushback from the parents because parents said, what do you mean you're going to have graduations at 10, 2, and 7? How can you do that? Johnny's not going to have his time to, have a party or whatever. But now that parents are used to it, it's worked very well. It's been very effective. We've saved dollars. And those are the things that we have to be smart. We have to